morning. Morning. Before I forget anything else, I want to thank Donald and the chiefs for inviting me here today. It's short notice. I'm glad I was around, and I hope you learn a little bit something right now. Yeah, I've been around a long time. Anybody here over the age of 50? How about over 60? Almost 70? Okay, I outbreak. I know I am. And as far as Stormy is concerned, I know a Stormy Mayo up in Massachusetts. Citation research. I am thrilled to be here today. I was asked to talk about women's history a little bit, but I'm going to throw in the pride side of it as well. Women have been serving our country forever as volunteers. None of us were ever drafted. None of us ever were forced into raising our hands. We all volunteered. Back in the early days, World War I, World War II, the women who served were primarily in the medical corps or as clerks. That's all they did. Were they ever asked if they were gay? No. Were they? Quite a few of them were. You go into Korea and Vietnam, you've got the same thing. Clerks, administrative types, medical types. Were they being asked if they were gay? Well, that's where I fall into this time frame. Because back in the 60s and 70s, we all had to sign a document every 4 years. I do or do not have homosexual tendencies. I do or do not take or use drugs. You had to sign that, and right on the paper was a statement: if you lie, it's jail, it's $10,000 fine, blah, blah, blah. So for many years, I was signing those documents. When Don't Ask, Don't Tell came around, everybody said, oh, good, now we can serve kind of openly. But you still couldn't, because there was still that threat of somebody coming up and knocking on your door. I was around for the witch hunts of the earlier years. I saw the men and women being arrested. I've seen the women who fought the government for years trying to get back into the military because they were kicked out for being gay. Don't Ask, Don't Tell didn't make it any easier, although you could at least talk to your friends, and it was a little bit safer. I will point out that in one certain sequence, I was in a unit, and there was a XO called me into her office, and she said, "Are you gay? If you answer yes, I will process you out, and I won't take no for an answer." And I turned to her and said, "I will not answer your question. You have no business asking it. Besides, I know where you hang your hat every night." Because she was a lesbian also. Don't push that limit if you've got a skeleton in your own little closet. And I knew hers. As I said, people have been serving for years. I've watched the women go from doing nothing but medical and clerical work to operating machinery. I know some of the Navy women are doing things I never would have thought of. One of the women I met back in the 90s was doing underwater demolition work out of Norfolk. It amazes me to see how the women have progressed and the jobs that they can do today. I love the articles about the women who just went through Ranger School a couple years ago, and now how they're going through infantry school and on to other things. They are making so many strides that people of my generation didn't get to see or do. My background was supply. From supply, I became a first sergeant after many years. It took a lot of work, a lot of courage, a lot of avoiding certain instances or gatherings because I couldn't bring my girlfriend. I couldn't bring my partner. It was attending everything by myself. Even as I got older, just before I retired and things started to open up, I still wouldn't bring anybody with me because of that chance that someone else is going to say, hey, we're going to process you. I had too many years in to think about it. When you look back at history, and those of you who are younger, you may not know some of these names. I know some of them have popped up on the screen. Miriam Ben Shalom was in the Army, Army Reserves, trained as a drill instructor, outed, had to fight the government. She managed to get back in, was in for one more year, and the government kicked her back out. She, along with several others, were fighting the government all around the same time in the 70s. And it's all too young for most of you to even know about them. Look back at history, and you will find out about her. Lenny Makrovich, whose name I know has popped up on the screen, fought the government. His headstone reads, I was given a medal for killing 2 men. I was giving a discharge for loving 1. He was an amazing man who also fought the system, but was kicked out for being gay. I never realized that Harvey Milk was in the Navy as a dive instructor until I started to read up on him. Of course, I'm not about to read up on a whole lot of guys. I was nicely surprised to read what Harvey had done in his youth. I knew about him afterwards because I had met him years ago. If you're interested in reading a book, get a hold of the book Conduct Unbecoming by Randy Schultz. That kind of points out what the people went through in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, even the 70s, and some of their struggles, and how they managed to continue their career, or in some cases, lose their career, just because they loved someone of the same sex. Colonel Margaret Kammermeyer, her name is up on the screen also. Fantastic book, Serving in Silence. Turned into a movie by Barbara Streisand starring Glenn Close. Showed what the colonel went through and how she fought the government years onward to try and stay in, but was not allowed to. She did retire out as a colonel. She's still serving our country in other ways on the political side. And recently I've had the distinct pleasure of meeting Major General Tammy Smith, highest ranking female serving the United States Army, currently serving over in Korea. Her wife has accompanied her. You would never have thought of that years ago, especially when I was in. You would not have thought about taking your spouse with you unless it was a husband and wife. Now Tammy's wife goes with her wherever she goes. Tammy speaks out at many Pride events or any other type of military event around the country and around the world. She was just here a couple months ago. These are people to start looking at for your history. I had a small part. My 22 years were kind of indescript. But there are people that have served and done so much more when it came to fighting the government. Since I retired, I fight the government, but not while I was in. I kept a low profile as much as I could. However, the men that I worked with all knew where I was coming from. And I would pal around with them 90% of the time. And that was to keep myself kind of hidden, but at the same time, they had my back, no matter what I did or said, or what part of the country or world I was in. They were there to protect me. And since I've moved down here to Key West, I have several guys in my community who also watch my back. When I sit in Aqua, the guys watch me as much as I watch the crowd. So it gives me a sense of being and a sense of caring that I never saw in another community that I've been in across the United States. I'm thankful that you're here in Key West. This is an amazing community. When I wrote one of my books called Women at Risk, I interviewed over 68 women. Some of them were gay, some of them talked about it, some of them were raped, some of them talked about it, some of them had amazing careers. Their stories were never shared until I asked them to sit down with me. And it's their stories that help make our history, as well as women's history, so important. You'll always hear about what the men did. You seldom hear about what the women did. And it wasn't until 1997, I think, before the women who served in World War II finally started to talk about the things they did and what they experienced back in World War II. So there's now a generation gap. But at the same time, I've seen people who came back from Desert Storm in 1990-91, and the people who have been in Iraq since then are already talking and getting their stories out, and that's important. No matter what you did, no matter how small you might think it was, how unimportant you think your job was, your service to our country is important, and you should share it. Share it with your shipmates, share it with your family, especially your family. Share it at school if you attend school or college. Share it with your children if you have kids. One of the things I do when I go out and talk to students at schools is ask them, did your parents serve? I don't know. Well, they should know. Talk to your family. My family never asked me what I did. And I did 22 years worth. Never once was I asked, where was I? What did I do? Where did I go? Who did I meet? What was my job? What do you mean you were a first sergeant? What's that? Never. No questions. So as you stay in or get out, think about what you've done and write it down. Share it with your family members. Let them know you were proud to serve. You were proud to do whatever it was your country asked you to do. And you were proud to wear a uniform, for whether it was a 2-year hitch or 20 plus years. Be proud of your service. Be proud that you may or may not be gay. I don't care one way or the other. I love everyone. I seldom diss someone, although we do know a few that I will. But be proud of who you are. Especially anyone of another ethnicity, another culture, another color. We've all been there. I've even lost my color if you look at my arms. And that's thanks to Uncle Sam and some of the bases I was at. Think about your own history and be sure to share it along the way. I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for today. It's a great day to be alive. It's Pride Month.